Welcome to the Illuminating Primary Care podcast.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Illuminating Primary Care, a podcast with Menlo Park Recruitment. My name's Kieran Fletcher. My guest today is on Illuminating Primary Care. He's a former GP, a writer, and founder of Noggin The Brain People, Clara Doran. Thank you for joining me today, Clara.
Thanks for having me, Kieran. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So if you could just give the listeners, Clara, just kind of a little bit of a background about yourself, and then we'll go into some topics that we've discussed off the podcast.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, as you said in the intro, my background is in general practice. I studied medicine at Newcastle University and then have worked, so did all my junior doctor work around there and completed GP training around Newcastle and the Northeast. And then I've worked as a GP as a locum salary doctor, NHS and private over the last few years. I think it amasses to about 15 years in total before stepping back from general practice. Combination of different reasons, a lot of it driven by my own health circumstances and just a change of direction. And now I am, yes, in a totally different arena with my own business and creative writing as well. So yeah, total change, but my foundations are very much doctoring and being a GP. So that never
Yeah,
leaves you.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Could you please give the listeners a bit of an idea as to what the Noggin Brain is and what it does and kind of what your mission has been with that so far?
Yeah, so sort of as I mentioned, I had unfortunate sort of health circumstances myself. So when my son was just about to turn one, I was unfortunately diagnosed with having multiple sclerosis, and
Mm.
that had followed a number of sort of difficult symptoms and obviously a challenging time, but really sort of led me down a different path in terms of trying to understand a bit more about looking after my brain, what brain health really was, and how I could care for myself and sort of those around me. And that really took me around it on a different route, learning a bit more about sort of preventative medicine, functional medicine, nutrition, sleep science, all these different interesting things that I had never really had as much time for as I would have liked to when I was doing
Yeah.
sort of standard GP training. And from that has come our business, which is Noggin The Brain People. And we have a mission to improve the cognitive health of the nation. And we're doing that through education, supplementation, and motivation. And as part of that, we've got 3 nutritional supplements which we've created to help some of the common symptoms that we all face around sort of low energy, difficulty unwinding and sleeping, and also some of the symptoms to deal with that affect us through menopause. So yes, our supplements are one part of the business. Really trying to help people understand how much we can do to look after our brains is incredibly important. And again, I think as a doctor, you feel like you should know those kind of things already, but again, you learn it in a certain way when you're practicing, and then obviously when you have that unfortunate patient experience yourself, it does sort of take on a different life of its own. And I think
Yeah.
what I've learned is something we can all benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. Um, so just to kind of give the listeners a bit of an idea, we've been liaising pre-recording of the podcast, and we've discussed particular topics that we're going to talk through today. So if you're happy to, then we'll just dive right in, and I'll ask you about the first one. So particularly for GPs within primary care at the moment, Clara, um, if we were to talk about a way that how they can identify when they might be feeling the pressure, what do you think would be important for people on that note in terms of what they need to be looking out for and that sort of thing?
I think as doctors, regardless of what stage you're at, I think we do a great job of caring for others and not always caring for ourselves. And I
Yeah,
think part of that is really around um, we're busy. It's an incredibly busy job, and there's lots of time demands that are put upon us as doctors, and particularly in general practice. And I think we're also really trained to look for the big things. And your day is set up around I don't want to miss anything. I want to make sure that I'm giving the best care to my patients. And really you're looking for those big red flags and those sort of scary diagnoses as well as all the other stuff that goes on. And I think
mm,
as a result of that, often for our own health, we're looking for big things as well. And so when the small things come along, or we notice slight changes maybe in ourselves, we're very quick to sort of minimize it and say, well, yes, I'm a bit grumpy, or God, I don't feel quite, I'm a bit annoyed, or feeling a bit more tired than usual, but it's fine. It's not this, it's not that. And you kind of therefore just kind of put it to the side and keep going. Um, and I think what we've seen, I guess, post COVID and all, throughout that actually these small things really do matter, and they can easily build into big things. But even if they don't build into big things, as small things, they're still important. And when I say those sort of small things, I guess the things I'm thinking about, and from what I've seen from my own practice and from my research, is it's starting with how our relationships with others, often that sort of sense of irritability, feeling like people are asking too much of you, feeling like just that overwhelmed sense, really, that actually if someone asks me to do one more thing, that's it, I just can't do it. And again,
Mm.
that one more thing may easily be something extremely small, but again, that one thing is the thing that just takes you over the edge. So I think it's just recognizing that irritability sort of in yourself, and having
Okay.
a low threshold for recognizing that's maybe a sign of something else. And I
Okay.
think
And just
beyond
going
that,
off, just sorry,
yeah.
sorry, Clara, just going off that, are you thinking in terms of, if you are asked to do one more thing, you might flip. Do you find that people might find this with in the working environment, or could it be something that they don't really flip until they're at home? Could it be in any sort of environment that happens?
I think it's both. I mean, again, from sort of my perspective, I know that, when I was in practice, certainly I would, you know, you're maintaining it such, you're in such a privileged and professional position that
Mm.
you certainly want to maintain that at all costs. So I think even when you are feeling a bit stressed or a bit overwhelmed, which is quite a lot, we have a way of managing that out with our homes that makes it look to others as if you're absolutely fine. And behind the door in the consulting room, and in the corridor and in the reception, you're the same as you always were. But I think often it does translate into home life. And again, that
Okay.
may, we're talking about irritability and changes in sort of mood and willingness to kind of, or ability to kind of manage circumstances. But I think it can also sort of translate into how you behave at home, and that can include your sort of
Yeah.
routines as well. So if you're somebody that normally comes home and has does another job, or maybe has other activities that you need to do, or you maybe prioritize exercise or things like that, but like those sort of dropping those activities, or not feeling that you've got
Yeah.
the energy to do it, I think are all signs that something is building.
Yeah. It sounds almost then that in a lot of ways, GPs almost have to have a bit of a facade and wear a mask when they're at work. If they are suffering themselves and struggling, it's almost as though they're not really supported to let that show. Would you agree with that? Do you think that's accurate?
I mean, I think the support that's available obviously depends on where you're working, the practice you're in. I
Absolutely.
think again, as a locum, certainly, and having I've done probably I've done certainly did a lot of locum work. I think it's particularly difficult because you don't have that sort of comfort factor in your practice, and people don't know you, you don't know them, and certainly you want to seem you're maybe trying to make a good impression in terms of thinking about future employment and things. So yeah, I think it can be really hard to admit when you're struggling. I think it's easier to often put a brave face on it and keep going.
Mm.
Um, the clock is going all the time. The patients are there. You've got to. There is a pressure there that you have to just keep going. And I think often that then can therefore translate or result in changes in your home life, your activities, as we discussed, and
Yeah.
even some of your sort of personal habits, sleeping, those kind of things, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a while, that,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
can all be impacted. Yeah. Um,
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's really insightful. Thank you. Um, Now, in terms of kind of one of the other areas that we'd mentioned pre-podcast, was that you wanted to talk about some simple steps that people can take that actually work, that they can kind of implement into their everyday lives. Would you mind just going into a little bit more depth about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, it's one thing, I think the biggest thing is recognizing when things are tricky, or recognizing
Yeah.
when you're struggling. And then it's obviously, if I am struggling and it doesn't feel like it's a big enough thing that I need to go and talk to somebody about, how can we try and improve some of that ourselves? How can we manage it? And again, our brains are real creatures of habit. They thrive on routine, and if your routine is busy, then it will, your brain will kind of work to keep you in that routine. And it's up to us really to kind of change things and make an effort to make it different. And I think, the bigger things we can do are obviously making sure we take our annual leave, making sure that we don't, have a time off at the weekends and time off in the evenings. But sometimes during the day, that isn't all that helpful. Even though you're looking forward to the
Mm.
weekend, how do you get through the sort of day as it is? So some of the things I think can be quite helpful, and they are around the ideas of sort of taking micro breaks, or having change and just basically change your routine, that what you're doing, in that current moment. So again, as doctors, we're often asked to do lots of different things at once, and we
Mm.
know from research now that actually that multitasking, is not good for us. It's not good for our brains. It makes us more tired, and it also can result in finding it harder to make decisions. So
Mm.
therefore, trying to really prioritize what we're doing, and then make your list and work through it, but finding ways to take small breaks, is really important. And that can be just as small as even looking at a couple of pictures on your phone, something that reminds you of kind of happy times, or something that's totally different, family or holiday
Okay.
or something like that. Those kind of things can just be enough to kind of change the sort of cycle of thought that our brain's in, to break that cycle and kind of take us back into the work circumstance with a fresher outlook. It sounds tiny, and is tiny, but it does
Yeah.
actually just make a little difference that that we can really that does benefit us.
Okay. Yeah. I honestly expected that it'd be something quite quite a lot bigger than, something as simple
Yeah.
as looking at photos on your phone. But I mean, that's something that you can do very quickly. I mean, most people have their phones on them 24/7, it seems like now. So
Yeah,
yeah, to be able to do something like that is really straightforward, isn't it?
absolutely. And again, I think, that's the simplest thing. I'm thinking, the doctor in the consulting room, the patient's waiting, feeling the pressure, or knowing that maybe you're on time and you're kind of up to date with things, which is a nice feeling to be in if you have that.
Yeah.
And your probably instinct is to try and get ahead, read the notes, look what's in front of you, try and catch up. But actually, it's better for you, to take 10 seconds looking at a couple of pictures, or making sure, again, we'll get to that, but making sure you've got water, you've had water,
Mm.
or even just getting up and walking around your room. Again, physical activity is really important, and that's is something that most of us try and factor into our day where we can. But
Mm.
again, in the consulting room, standing up, doing a few squats, stretching a little bit, again, all those little tiny things,
Yeah.
um, change the way your brain, the sort of cycle and thought pattern that your brain is in. And also, just basically change it up so that when you sit back down for the next patient, you've got a slightly different, you're feeling a bit more refreshed.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it sounds so basic and so small, but the research is there that actually these kind of micro breaks, do work. And again, by building on those and doing those more frequently, that helps us manage our stress levels.
Yeah. So that the micro breaks can be things like you say, then as simple as doing a few squats. It might just be having a walk around your consulting room. It could be things like
Yes.
looking at photos on your phone. Um,
Yeah.
is there anything that's, I mean, in terms of in your experience, do you think the micro breaks work just as well as anything that might be more of a major factor? A bigger thing to do, or do you find that it's too difficult to compare the two?
I think ideally you want to be doing both. So again, the bigger things that are really important for how we deal with stress is, our daily habits and our lifestyle, which again, as doctors, we are more than comfortable to sit and talk about to other people and point out, and again, I'm talking from my own experience. So, we can sit there and ask about exercise and ask about
Mm.
alcohol, and, talk about weight and all those different things very, very comfortably. But it can be a lot harder to sort of look inwards and think, actually, am I doing all those things, or maybe I'm maybe even doing too many of those things, in terms of, exercise and things. Obviously exercise is really important, but sometimes over exercise is an issue as well. But I guess the big things that really, which we haven't said much about really, but is actually probably the biggest thing, is around sleep. So as a GP, you hear about people not sleeping and having difficulty sleeping so frequently. It just becomes, again, quite a sort of normal part of consulting, that you're used to hearing about
Mm.
broken sleep patterns. And again, I think we can be quite almost laissez-faire when it comes to ourselves, in terms of recognizing when we don't sleep. And I think we sort of accept, oh, well, I just don't sleep all that well, and that's how it is.
Mm.
And actually, one of the most significant things we can do to help us build our resilience, manage stress better, do everything better, is really prioritize sleep, and good quality
Yeah.
sleep as it is.
Yeah. And do you think that part of the reason that GPs might have their sleep affected is, if we work our way back again, is because of the stress factors and the expectations that are on their shoulders, and then that shows itself, shall we say, in a disrupted sleep pattern and in broken sleep? Is that kind of, are the two very firmly connected, do you think?
I think absolutely. I think, and that is the challenge, that it is a vicious cycle. So we can, definitely, the more stressed you are, the harder it is to sleep. The less you sleep, or the more broken your sleep, the more stressed you are. So it's a difficult one. I mean, when I studied, when I did psychiatry as a junior doctor, I remember a consultant psychiatrist saying to me really, really early on in my career, it's really hard to have good mental health if you don't have good sleep. And I remember sort of writing
Mm.
that down and thinking, oh yeah, yeah, fine, yeah, okay. But that has really stuck with me, and it certainly stuck with me all through my practice. And I really think about that a lot now, when I read so much, even in the press or in different things, about people talking about sleep. Like, it's such a innate, inbuilt thing that we need to be able to do, and yet so
Yeah.
many of us do not sleep well, and it is just a vicious cycle. And again,
Yeah.
we can take steps to try and improve our sleep. And
Mm.
absolutely, even feeling that you're taking those steps is a good starting point, because again, feeling like we've got some sort of control over our health is really important as well, and feeling empowered that we can do something about it really makes a difference. So
Yeah.
yeah, again, looking at our daily habits when it comes to sleep. I studied sleep science, and was really, again, quite taken aback by the whole idea that a good night's sleep really begins when you get up in the morning, which is something that, again, I
Mm.
think, even as a doctor of all those years, I hadn't really grasped that,
Yeah.
how, it isn't, we think we can just go to bed, turn the light off, and go to sleep. Or actually, we do benefit from preparing ourselves and having the end of the day in mind, even when we're at the beginning of the day. So I think that's something, that is incredibly important
Yeah,
to
absolutely. I
tackle.
mean, we've actually had a conversation recently with, I forget exactly what the gentleman's profession was, but he was a sleep specialist basically,
Mm,
and something that he'd mentioned was that it's all well and good being in bed for 8 hours.
yeah,
As kind of, I think, is the general consensus. If you get your 8 hours, you're going to be all right, that sort of thing. But there's a big difference between having 8 hours in bed and having
yeah,
good quality sleep. And that's something that can affect everybody, GPs and everybody else in the world. If you can have a shorter amount of sleep, but if it's better quality sleep, it's better for you than more time in bed, but not as good as sleep. If you're waking up or struggling to actually drop off, there's so many factors that can affect it. And as you've mentioned as well, Clara, that the day that you have
hmm
massively influences how well you sleep that night, doesn't it?
absolutely. And I think sorry, that's my, oh, sorry, God, that's coming
Oh,
up my
that's all right.
screen. There we go. I thought I turned everything off, but there we go.
No problem.
So yeah, interruptions, we'll come to that. But yeah, no, absolutely. The day you have is really important. It does really make a difference. Again, obviously, the stress and how you feel and how you unwind, or how you sort of process that stress. But also, again, the simple things in terms of routine. And again, if you have you've had children, or if you're then you'll know about how their brain, or you've had that experience, then you know how much their sleep pattern is so routine, and when you break that routine, everyone suffers. And I think
Mm,
actually as adults there's a lot we can learn from that as well, because
mm,
we want to, we really want to try and keep our sleep pattern as regulated as possible. That idea of going to bed and getting up at roughly the same time every day, even at the weekends, is really important. The idea of when we do get up, trying to get some exposure to daylight and sort of before midday is really important as well. And then making sure we get some exercise in is key. And of course, caffeine, which is again many of our crutches, is the coffee or tea. And again, certainly
mm,
in a busy practice and a busy day, if you've got time to drink it, you might have several sort of half cups or whatever. But again, if you have time to drink it, then it can be an easy thing to reach for, without
mm,
really recognizing that actually how much coffee or tea that you're drinking um, is is going to interfere potentially with your sleep pattern as you go to bed that night. So
mm.
again, it's just being aware of all those things, and really trying to keep the caffeine down, certainly from the afternoon onwards.
Yeah, like you say, I think very often it's the easy thing to reach for. As soon as you start thinking, "Oh, I'm flagging a little bit," it's very easy to just go to the coffee machine. It's everything's made easier now, isn't it?
Yes,
With instant
absolutely.
coffee and that sort of thing. More
Yeah,
often than not, you've got a McDonald's or a Starbucks or something just down the road as well. So it's very very easy to do. Um,
yeah, for
okay,
sure.
that's really insightful. Thank you. Um, Something else that we'd mentioned, we've touched on the micro breaks, but we said that we wanted to discuss recognizing things that drive the feeling of being overwhelmed, and how to reduce that. Could you talk to us a little bit more about that?
I think again, just starting with sort of the basics of really just checking in with yourself about,
Mm,
how are you feeling. So when when your working day starts, um, again, there's often so much to do that it's so important for us that we just keep going. But actually, having a few seconds to just check in with yourself. How do I feel? Do I feel like rested and ready for the day ahead? Do I feel like I'm, got a clue of what my days or my morning's going to look like? That's all really,
mm,
really important. And I think if your answer isn't around those things, and it's actually, I don't know how I feel, or actually, God, I feel really tired, or
mm,
even just sort of recognizing that in yourself is a good place to start. And I think it's knowing that what you bring into work, from what you've left at home, or maybe it's been from the day before, or all those different things impact how you feel. So there's a lot of evidence around, um, when it comes to stress and feeling overwhelmed, that actually just recognizing it in the first instance is a really important place to start. And once you kind of have that, once you've done that, you can sort of begin to move on from it a little bit. And again, you can sort of realize that, yeah, I do feel like that, but it's okay. I'm going to, carry on and do the other parts of my morning that I need to do.
mm.
And I think, again, we're really quick to, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. How many times a day does somebody ask you, and you just come back with that standard answer, and that's fine. You
Yeah,
don't have to tell everyone exactly how you feel. But again, for yourself, it's important to have a bit of an idea to check in and really think about how you feel. And if you know that you're coming from a place of, oh God, I'm tired, I'm not quite where I want to be, that you can, manage that as the day goes on, and be kinder to yourself. Maybe don't take on that extra task that somebody asks you to do. Maybe
mm,
try and get that extra 10 minutes, coffee break, or time outside, and try and
yeah,
build in those extra little breaks that you can, even if you're facing a really sort of stretched busy day ahead. It's trying to
mm,
just find some way of changing your mindset, and that is really extremely powerful. And I think also, again, obviously, we're thinking about work, but we bring in things from home into work, and
yeah,
that is something that I think, again, we don't, we think that we don't, because we think we can separate it, but actually quite often, you might not be thinking about it, or you might not be thinking about the argument or whatever it was, but actually it might still be there. So again, that's where that sort of emotional kind of check-in point, is really important, just to try and kind of put a stake in the ground about how you're feeling, and help you move
yeah.
move forward. And I think once we've done that, I think breathing is the other thing we haven't sort of talked about when we're talking about simple
Mm,
things, that power of those sort of few really short but deep breaths. We
mm,
know that can reduce our cortisol, reduce our hot stress hormones, and really begin to sort of give us a little reset. So once that day is getting started, and you recognize you're not quite on your top form, then that is again a quick way and a private way. No one has to see it or know it that you're doing it. That you
mm.
can begin to reset yourself and face the challenges and the busyness of the day you've got coming.
Yeah. You've mentioned there, Clara, a few different things that people can do if they're wanting to stay quite private about things.
Mm.
Um, do you think it's important for GPs and other people alike to try and discuss these things? I know I'm not saying to the extent of, if you're having a little bit of a hard time or you're feeling stressed or anything like that, to go and seek, counsel.
Hmm.
But even just to talk to friends or family, or if you're a newly qualified GP, for example, should you talk to a GP mentor or somebody who, leadership type figure? Is it important to communicate this side of thing, or do you think it's very much down to the individual if they prefer to be private?
I think both of those things are correct. Really, I think it
Okay.
is, you've got, you have to decide for yourself. However, there is great power in sharing, and I think particularly if it's issues around how work situations are affecting you, or if you are locuming and you're in different practices. Every practice operates as a small business. It has its own politics. It has its own dynamic.
Mm,
It is hard going into that environment. And again, I mean, I remember it myself. Like, again, particularly when you're newly qualified, you're trying to get your arms around just doing the job, and then you've got the sort of situation of you don't quite know what you're walking into in terms of who's who, and what sort of the right things to do are. So
yeah.
it is difficult, and I think that talking about that to a mentor is really good, because again, you'll find that most people have been in that position as well. There's probably not a single person that hasn't dealt with difficult times in the workplace, but certainly when it comes to medicine and the world of general practice, a lot of the challenges that people face are very common. And whilst it might be slightly different depending on your own situation, there are common threads that people can definitely help with if you feel like you can share. And I think it's really important to feel like you can do that and try and identify somebody that is could be the right person to talk to.
Yeah, even if that's at home, if it's a family member or a partner or anything like that, it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily have to be in the workplace as such, does it?
Absolutely. And I think again, if what's interesting there is sometimes if you have another, maybe your partner's medical as well, or maybe you've got a family member that's been in medicine. I think that can be good and challenging at the same time, because again, I think
Mm,
it's great when someone can relate to sort of some of the circumstances, but it's also remembering that everyone's had their own experience and things at different times were different. So the stresses that some of the doctors are facing now won't be the same as even when I started in practice, which was quite a while ago. So again, we all put our own kind of lens on it from our own experience, but actually how you feel, what you're experiencing is incredibly important, and is your own experience. So again, I guess what I'm trying to say is don't be talked out of anything by somebody that maybe
mm,
feels like, well, oh, you need to keep going, or you'll be fine, or
yeah,
you can manage, that sort of,
yeah,
it's obviously coming from a place of support and care. However, sometimes it can kind of add to that feeling of, oh, I shouldn't be feeling that way, or maybe it's not that bad. Where
yeah.
actually, so I guess, yeah, trying to find the support that is right for you, and knowing that whatever someone else says, it's still your experience.
Yeah, just going off that, actually, I think it's a really good point that you make, Clara, in terms of certain people don't necessarily fully understand the pressures that are being faced by GPs, and I think that in itself is an issue with patients who maybe don't understand what pressure there is in primary care currently, and what GPs and other nurses and allied health professionals and clinicians as a whole are having to go through, particularly within the NHS. And sometimes it seems to come from that lack of understanding, which I appreciate. It's not always made easy for people to have a full appreciation as to exactly what the state of affairs is in primary care. Um, but at the same time, it's hard to get the message out there to help people understand. And it's this vicious cycle, isn't it, that you've got the patients who don't fully understand, and because of their lack of understanding, they're almost putting more pressure on the GPs, and the GPs are trying to deal with this without, letting on necessarily how much pressure there is. And it must be extremely difficult for people to cope with, and especially as you've mentioned, for a newly qualifying GP, not only to cope with the work itself, but then with the pressure that comes with that, arguably lack of understanding from patients. It's not easy to cope with right out the great gate, is it?
It's really hard. And again, I think sort of acknowledging that is really important. And again, I think, you know, it's you're dealing with it. It's different. It's just different stakeholders. It's important. Obviously, your responsibility to your patients is so important. However, it's a really challenging situation that everyone is facing, um, and I think it's that sort of everyone's doing their best, and I think it's
Mhm.
recognizing that all these things we're talking about in terms of stress and feeling overwhelmed and struggling to manage and maybe being a bit more snappy or erratic, that applies on both sides. So that applies to the patients as well. And again, I certainly remember many, many times, the receptionist tales of the patient being really difficult in the waiting room and
Mm.
complaining and giving the receptionist a really hard time, and then you're thinking, gosh, what's this person going to come in and say, because it's my fault really that they've had to wait or whatever. And then they come in and sit with you, and it's they're so absolutely nice as ninepence, and
Mm.
just delighted to be into their appointment. And I think again, there's so many different people involved in a patient being seen in practice, but again, these sort of stress levels and how they present themselves um, are affecting everyone in that sort of chain, from the patient, the patient's relative, the receptionist, the nurse, yourself as the doctor. And I think that itself can feel quite overwhelming. And again, as the doctor, I think sometimes you feel certainly, I know I used to feel the responsibility for that. When the patient comes
Mm.
in, if they are stressed about waiting, or something not having gone the way it should have done, you do often feel like it's up to you to sort it out or apologize, or those kind of things. And again, I think that's difficult, because it isn't actually up to you and it isn't your fault. And I think um, it's just it's kind of being able to see that with being obviously compassionate, as we're all trained to be, but
Yeah.
um, recognizing that the kind of practicalities of things aren't actually your fault, and trying to not carry that kind of weight with you. And I think particularly as a new doctor or a new GP even, um, it's finding your own to find your place with that, and find how you can manage your what sort of level of responsibility you feel is yours and can carry.
Yeah. Absolutely. Brilliant. Um, I think, particularly for a number of seasoned GPs that I've spoken with of late as well, burnout is very much a real factor.
Mm,
I think, again, it's something that patients potentially don't really understand and they can't necessarily appreciate, because
yeah,
it's burnout in a different way to a lot of professions.
yeah,
Some of the numbers and the pressure and expectations that are on GPs is, almost, you think, well, it's unsafe. And
yeah.
a number of GPs don't want to have to risk anything. With what you've been discussing so far, Clara, and gone into, about things like the micro breaks and, looking after yourself with things like sleep, particularly. Do you think any of these sorts of things can overcome burnout, or in your experience, if you've hit burnout, is it, a bit too late for that, and you need to have a proper break?
I think that's a really good question. I think I don't think they can probably overcome burnout. However,
Okay.
I guess from some of the things we're talking about, um, it's if we can identify feelings of stress and how they're showing up for us earlier on in a process that could eventually become burnout, then
Mhm.
we're trying to look at ways that we can kind of improve our resilience and tackle some of the stresses that are going on around us, to hopefully mean that we're caring for ourselves more, and the symptoms that are affecting us don't get to the point of a final a break or leaving, or the profession, or leaving your job is really the only answer. But again, that's not always realistic, and
Yeah.
whilst these things are always going to help how you feel, like getting a good night's sleep and prioritizing your sleep if you can is always going to improve how you feel the next day. A lot of these issues are much more deep rooted you know, in our lives than some of these things can really sort of tackle. But similarly, the small things do make a difference to even, when we are burnt out, or if somebody is burnt out, or if somebody has had to leave their job, or, they are seeking help or treatment for depression or any of those kind of things. That these ways of caring for our brain are even more essential to run along in parallel with that to help those other things really work. And again, I think we think big things, scary things, red flag things. I think as doctors, we're always on the worst case scenario, so we think only the big things are going to are going to make a difference. We're actually big and small. Are going to make a difference to sort of an overall recovery and to building us back into something that how we want to be.
Yeah. In your experience, then, have you found that burnout can be reached by lots of small things, like you've been mentioning, if it's having to take on an extra task, or not having had enough sleep, as opposed to it being you keep going, then eventually you've just you've hit burnout? Is it something that you feel manifests itself over a longer period, and it takes lots of it could be lots of little things, or it could be a combination of little and large? Is that kind of what you found in terms of people you've dealt with who maybe have been burnt out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, again, first of all, I guess we're all different. So, we're all, some of us can, you know, these small things don't really show up at all, and it's, burnout or these, things do present as kind of, having to leave your job, having a breakdown, having to seek formal help. So again, that might be how it shows up for some people. But I think the signs are often there in the process, and again, we sometimes just don't either can't see them, don't want to see them, aren't able to see them. There's lots of reasons why we can find it hard to identify that we're struggling, and that can sort of lead, obviously, unfortunately, can lead to a bigger issue that needs a bigger solution. Certainly when I even so some of the private work I did was in a corporate environment, and so again, quite often I was, seeing people there. We did a combination of GP consultations, but also did sort of annual medicals as well. So it was kind of interesting seeing and talking about stress in a sort of a different profession, but seeing
Okay.
people on a fairly regular basis. And it's interesting, I guess people are just, everyone's just so different. What people see, some people will talk about stress really easily and talk about the things that are affecting them, and happily talk about a difficult work environment or a difficult boss or being overladen. But other people, they're carrying the weight of the world and they won't talk about anything, or they certainly wouldn't link it to work, or they wouldn't link it to home life, where actually, from an outsider's point of view, you can see that all those different things are kind of contributing to the state that somebody is, unfortunately, that's what they're suffering with and how they're presenting.
It sounds like it's
Um,
something that really accumulates then, isn't it, over time? Um, are there any particular things that you think, or any particular key signs of burnout that people should be looking out for? I know you've mentioned earlier about being potentially irritable, or tired and that sort of thing. Are these the sorts of things that people should be looking for with burnout, or with burnout specifically? Are they a little bit more severe?
I think I mean, yes, I mean, I think they obviously, if we're talking about burnout as at the end of that sort of process, then yes, they can be sort of more profound. But I think, these things do show up at different points throughout. So yes, I think
Yeah.
changes to your mood, changes to your sleep patterns, change to your interest and enjoyment out of things, change how you feel about work as well. I mean, again, I think, stress is part of every job, and it's a necessary thing, and actually a bit of stress is obviously good for us. And again, there's times in our lives when you can comfortably say you feel stressed, but 2 or 3 days later, after the project's over or after the busy
Mm.
clinic or whatever, you can go, oh, that's over now. But I think when it doesn't feel like things are coming and going, when I think when you're not when you're, when you're not seeing a relief or feeling a relief in things or even really enjoying things anymore. Again, we do this job and we do we've done medicine and we see patients, to care for people, to help them, and to, for lots of different reasons, and ultimately because we want to. And I think, yeah, again, one of the key aspects of burnout is, when you're not enjoying it in any way over a period of time, I think is another key thing
Mm,
that, again, often maybe people just sort of accept because, oh well, I've been doing it for 20 years, and oh, who enjoys their job? And again,
mm,
we can be very, very quick to kind of just say that it's acceptable and that's just how it goes, where actually, that isn't how it should feel. There should be ebbs and flows, difficult times, but when you're really seeing it, unable to see it in the positive in any way anymore, then again, I think those are signs that, it's time to sort of reevaluate and to seek help, whatever that help may be for you.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's going to prove very insightful for a lot of listeners, for sure. And the last point that we originally mentioned to discuss was a bit of a brain health 101.
Yeah.
Um, I'll just let you completely have the floor with this one then, Clara, and take that way you want to.
Yeah, great. I mean, I think, yeah, a lot of the things we talked about are sort of obviously mental health and how things present, emotional health and how they present. But again, a lot at the core of a lot of that is really how we care for our brains, and it's certainly something I never thought about really, as a doctor, because we learn about heart health and we learn about lungs and skin health and all those different things, but
Mm,
brains we tend to think more about in terms of diseases and symptoms and treatments, which it makes it, we don't sort of see it as an everyday thing, but actually caring for our brains, and having healthy habits that help us maintain a healthier brain can help with all these emotional and mental health symptoms that we're discussing. Again, it's not always the cure or the absolute fix for when there's diagnoses and things that need to be dealt with, but brain health and caring for it is important. So yes, I we have a mnemonic that we talk about, which is obviously brain. Try and keep it simple. And the first sort of the B in brain is really about being kind to yourself. And I think that's something we've sort of talked about a bit as well. That recognizing when things are difficult, talking about even to yourself that you feel like there's difficult things going on, and you know again, our brains are listening to how we talk to ourselves all the time. And again, when we talk negatively about ourselves, our brains hear that, and that can take us into a path of lower mood and more stress. So again, being kind to how we talk to ourselves and think about things is really important. And even simple things like toilet breaks, that is a way of being kind to yourself. Not only does it make you get up and go to your desk, but actually it's really important. And again, I remember many, many days and surgeries where like you just would recognize that you hadn't had anything to drink, you hadn't been to the bathroom, all those things, and actually we're not helping ourselves by that kind of by doing that. So again, being kind to yourself is really important.
mm,
Our rest. And again, we think about rest maybe around sleep, but we know that actually active rest is really important. So choosing to have wind down time, choosing to have activities that you find enjoyable, that take your mind away from the stresses and strains of everyday work or practice, when you're at home in the evenings, are important, and that also gives you a time to reflect. For me, I've certainly found, creative writing's been really good, but also the act of writing things down or writing everything down has been a real way that I've managed stress over the recent times. And again, that can be different ways. There's a whole sort of science behind just like sort of writing everything down that's on your mind. So waking in the morning or when you come home from work, if you've got lots of thoughts, just writing down whatever you want in a way that is just really kind of thought dumping out all those difficult things. And by doing that, you actually sort of eliminate some of that from your thinking patterns, and that's really helpful. So yes, active rest, find ways for yourself that are important that manage it, and think about using sort of pen and paper to just offload your mind from all the different things, as definitely
bit
that
of a
can be
journal
helpful.
type thing.
Yeah, and again, I think sometimes we think sort of, oh, it needs to maybe be dear diary, but actually, just words, anything, all that really helps in terms of managing stress. Um,
Yeah.
A in brain is absolutely for being active. We know that being active is important for us physically and mentally, but it's also really good for concentration and focus. And actually, the more you exercise or the more regularly you are active, the bit more beneficial it is for even for simple things like concentration. And again, I think certainly from my experience as well, people are kind of often in two different camps when it comes to exercises. They're
Mm.
keen at exercising, they have a great routine, they do loads. Sometimes they're really focused on marathons or big tasks, which is brilliant. But I think sometimes there's people that still just don't want to exercise because they maybe don't like it. And again, I think that's absolutely okay if you don't like it. But I think it's finding some way of being active that is going to be helpful for you. And again, it sounds strange to think. I think that doctors wouldn't know that. And again, we do all know that in our minds, but actually doing it, I think, can be different as well. And again, when you're feeling under pressure, that can be one of the first things to go, particularly if it's not your chosen way of managing your time.
Mm.
So trying to, again, being kind to yourself. You don't have to go for a run, you don't have to do something major, just a short walk. Just getting up and being active is really important. So I
Yeah,
think that's really, really good as well.
absolutely.
I is for intake and what we think about, and we haven't really talked, again, that's a whole different subject around what we eat and our nutrition. But again, what we eat and what we drink, and again, water, again, start at the beginning, water is absolutely key for that. Busy, you don't drink enough water. It's also easier because it means you don't have to go to the bathroom, which is really totally the wrong thing, both health wise and again, we all know that. But ultimately, and again, when you're on the wards and different things, again, that can also be easier. But yeah, see, you're drinking water now. But
Absolutely.
actually, for our brains, a dehydrated brain or not having enough water is going to make us more irritable. It makes it harder to make decisions, and also much more easily overloaded. So yeah, and again, that whole thing of, again, we do know this, but when you feel thirsty, it's already kind of too late. You should have been drinking more already. So making sure that you're drinking enough water and thinking about what you're eating during the day, particularly in times of stress. It can be easy to go for the extra coffee or the biscuits that are there. And yeah, that's absolutely fine. Make your choices, but I think we want to try and underpin our daily habits with
Mm.
meals that include enough protein, healthy fats, and slow release carbohydrates in the form of whole grains, and also making sure that we're eating relatively regularly. Because again, if we have sort of big dips in our blood sugar, we again, the mood levels change, our emotional reactivity changes, and everything can feel a lot bigger when we're hungry. That whole hangry word that, again, we're all kind of
Yes.
familiar now with. So that's important. And then N for N, the end of brain is obviously at nighttime, and that really comes back to sleep. So yes, prioritizing sleep. And I think, again, from sort of what I've discovered over particularly these recent years, that sleep hygiene and the habits that we've talked about and we maybe talk to patients about are really important to do ourselves. But I think also there's a question around, if that doesn't work, what do you do? And
Mm.
again, just I think not accepting that sleep isn't you don't sleep well, I think, is really important. There's lots of things you can do. CBTI is something that, again, I've learned about as being a really effective option for managing problems with sleep. And again, if you have
Okay.
like proper clinical insomnia, you know it's important that you seek help for it. So it's like we talked about with burnout almost. It's the small things and it's the everyday things that you can do, but then at what point do you actually go, hang on, no, this isn't right, this is a problem, I do need to do something else. So
Mm.
again, but the only way we can know that is by being aware of it in ourselves and recognizing that our how we're sleeping and how it affects us. So just be aware, I guess. If sleep is a problem for you, don't just accept it. There we go.
Fantastic.
Brain. There's no
Excellent.
quiz,
Yeah.
but yeah. Yeah.
No, no, but no, I think those points are very well made. They are very much applicable to everybody as well. I think, GPs, of course, will benefit from this, and they being the main cohort of our listeners on this podcast. But I do think that there's a benefit in there for everybody, and I do think that the general public in general needs to be taking more care of themselves in this day and age. It's such a fast-paced world that we live in, and people cut
Absolutely.
corners and make sacrifices in certain areas, and that can negate things like sleep or nutrition or activity.
Yeah,
And yeah, important that we stick to those, because it's what we need as human beings, really, to properly survive and to, for want of a better expression, live our best lives.
yeah,
In terms of
yeah,
the healthiest lives, at least. Um,
absolutely.
but that's been a really insightful conversation, Clara. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
We'll obviously put this out there, and hopefully, have a number of listeners who will find this as insightful as I have. Um, for anybody who is listening, you can find Illuminating Primary Care on all the normal platforms for where you can listen: Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're also on YouTube. Um, where can people find more information about yourself, Clara?
So our website is nogginbrain.co.uk, and then I'm
Okay.
also on LinkedIn as Dr. Clara Doran, and also Instagram and Twitter. I think it's Dr. Clara R. So yes, any questions or anything that people want to know more about, particularly, I'm more than happy. It's difficult to cover, so many big topics in a short period of time, and not feel
Yes.
like you're just skimming the surface. And again, that's something that we're working with Noggin to kind of get some more information around some of these particular topics, so that people can benefit and understand how they can make these sort of lifestyle changes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, yeah, thank you again for your time, Clara.
Thank you very much.